Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a 5 cards, one kit, but it's actually 7 cards, using the Pink and Main March card kit, which is the Celebrations kit. I'm just showing you that I had stamped out all the images using some VersaMark Clear Nocturne ink onto some Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I actually used my Arteza Everblend markers to color all these. I find it just so easy to stamp them all out as I'm sitting and watching television and just color, and then by the time I'm done, which is maybe an hour or so later because I'm coloring and watching, I have all these ready to go. So I'm going to fussy cut these out, and then we'll get started making all of the cards that I plan to make today. All the cards that I'm making today are actually pretty simple, just because this card kit lends that they're going to be fairly simple, which is nice. I like how everything matches, and it's just great. You don't have to do a lot of thinking, which is lovely. So I've trimmed down a piece of just some of the patterned paper that came in the kit, and that was trimmed down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. This piece here, I'm going to trim this down to be just a little bit bigger than that. So I'm not thinking about the math, so it's going to be just a little bit more than 4 inches and a little bit more than 5 1/4. So they'll have a tiny little border around that piece of patterned paper. And I love that. And my card base is going to be some of the yellow cardstock that came in the kit. And I cut all those down to be 5 1/2 inches by 8 1/2 inches. So I'm going to score all of them at 4 1/4. So that means they'll be side folding. Some of them might be top folding, but that's how they're all going to be. I'm going to take these dies that I have. These are actually the Brutus Monroe Circle Foundation dies. I'm going to cut out 3 circles using some of the purple cardstock. And then I'm going to get ready to start thinking about how I'm going to assemble. I decided I really wanted to use these chipboard stickers on this first card. Talk about making easy cards this way. You wouldn't have to use as many stickers as I did on this. You could probably get 1 card per sticker if you really, really wanted to. But I decided to grab out 3 of those, and I'm also going to use the Make-A-Wish in there as well. I love that these chipboard stickers are not super thick, so they'll mail really easily. But they do have some dimension, which is really cool. I'm gluing down all of my circles onto my patterned paper, just using some Nuvo Deluxe liquid adhesive. And then I am going to just peel off the release paper on the back of the stickers. I'm not showing you for the first couple, partly because I wasn't paying any attention, and so I'm not really in the camera. But then I move on to the third one, and I'm like, oh, I should probably show how it works. You do want to be a little bit careful because you could peel off the whole paper. I've done that before. Just kind of stick your finger, your fingernail in there and just kind of peel it back, or use a paper piercer, and that'll work really well too. But they stick nicely. Once they're down, they're down. I'll grab some of that liquid glue again and adhere this pattern paper down to the other pattern paper. There are so many patterns in this kit. There's basically like 24 patterns, which is great. If you missed the unboxing, I will have that linked down below so that you can go check that out, because you don't want to miss that, and you can take a look at all the things that came in this kit. And now I'm going to add some of the flatback sequins that came in the kit as well. I tried to grab them all pretty much in the same color for this one, and I was very liberal with how many that I put down. I'm using my Crystal Katana along with that same liquid glue, and I'm just gluing those all over and loving that. Oh my goodness, it looks so cool. But I'm not done there. I decided I do want to put a little bit on the inside. Like I've said before, I'm having a good time decorating all the insides of my cards. I decide to cut down this candle grouping. This was a whole set of candles on the stamp, and then I cut down just the 3. And then I am going to just take some of that VersaMark Clear Nocturne ink and stamp out another sentiment on the inside. That one's going to say, "It's your special day," and then I'll just use that liquid glue to adhere down the candles. So it's not real intricate on the inside, but at least there's a little something, which is fun. So the recipient opens it up, and then there's a little something extra. And then once I'm done with that, that's going to finish off our first card. So that one was a super easy one, just using the chipboard stickers. Love it. For card number 2, I'm going to start off with a piece of pattern paper that I cut down to 4 inches by 5 1/2 inches, so it'll only leave a border on the left and right hand side. I'm going to put that in the Doris folder that came in the kit, and just follow the directions on your machine, and then I ran that through mine following my directions, and look at how cool that is. You get this really neat impression. It's very subtle, but it's just neat, and I had talked about before how you could do that on like some plain paper and cut that out and use those sentiments. That'd be kind of fun. I used the die and cut out the frame using the glitter cardstock that came in the kit, and I'm also going to run it through on some of the blue cardstock
because I want to use the center of the blue and the outside of the silver, and then I'll just save those leftover pieces for another card. I'm going to make this a shaker. So this might be our only complicated card today. I have some acetate. This is just some inexpensive, actually I believe it's transparency paper, and I am going to just cut that down to about 3 inches by 3 inches. I'm going to cut 2 of them. So this is, I'll have that linked down below, but this is just some really inexpensive transparency paper. You can't emboss on this because it will melt. I have tried, but it came with a million sheets, and I'll probably never get through it in my lifetime, but there's a lot in there. Now that it's measured out pretty nicely and it's going to work pretty well, I'm going to grab out some 1/8 inch Scor-Tape. That's some really thin Scor-Tape, and then I'm going to just run that along those edges. It fits perfectly. You could use liquid glue, but this frame is pretty thin, and so I just didn't want any of that liquid glue seeping out of the sides. And this Scor-Tape is, it's a good strong adhesive, so that works out nicely. I'll just peel off all of the release paper on this, and then I will carefully set down my transparency paper. And then, so we have the front of our shaker all ready to go. The next step would be to take some Scotch foam tape, and I'm going to double that up. I want to make sure that my shaker bits have plenty of room. And because this frame is super thin, you're going to want to take whatever tape you use for your shaker bits, your shaker cards, and you're going to want to trim this down. I love using the Scor-Tape the Scotch foam tape for shakers. I don't use it so much for anything else, just mostly now for my shaker cards because it's easily cut and it is easily stacked up. And typically when I make shakers, I like to have them be doubled up. So I'm just making sure that I've got that nice and secure. There are no gaps. And then we're going to get ready to start assembling pieces. So my card base is that blue cardstock that you see there. I'm going to use some liquid glue on the embossed pattern paper that I made, or that I embossed. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with the blue piece of paper, just stick that down kind of in the center. I want to make sure that that's good and adhered there. And I'm going to take some of those candles. These were the leftover candles that I had trimmed down from the previous card. And I'm going to eventually put that down on the blue, but I'm peeling off all of my release paper. You definitely want to do that when you're making shakers. Peel your release paper first. I'm going to put a bunch of the sequins that came in the kit, and I'm also going to grab some Lawn Fawn chunky glitter. Just using my tonic spoon, I'm going to put a little bit of that in there. I mean, this is a birthday card, right? It has candles on it, so we want to make it nice and sparkly and fun. I thought that would be a good way to do it. And now we're going to take our second piece of acetate and just close it up. This is now my absolute favorite way to make shakers, is just using acetate on front and back, because this way you don't have to worry about the shaker pieces coming out and you can line everything up really nicely. So I'll take the liquid glue and I'll adhere that down to my blue square, and then I did put some more of that 1/8 inch Scor-Tape on the back of my acetate. I'll peel off all of the release paper on that, and then we'll stick that down to the front of our card. So that's the most complicated part of our card, but I love how cool that turned out. And then for our sentiment, I did stamp it in VersaMark ink onto some of the purple paper, and then I covered that with some white embossing powder, and then I just heat set that till that was smooth and melted. I'm going to take my banner that came in the kit, the banner die, just tack it down. You'll notice that obviously I'm not using a full piece of paper there, but because I want to have a fishtail banner on both ends, there's an easy way to do it. Just kind of line it back up, and then there you go. You have a fishtail on both ends, and the sentiment fits in there perfectly. I'll take some more of my Scotch foam tape that I had all doubled up, and I'll put that on the back so that way it matches the same size as my shaker, and I'll put that down below. Now we're going to have to do the inside of our card, right? We've started doing it, we're going to finish doing it, and I'm going to take one of the hats because I have plenty of elements to be able to put inside my cards. And I'm just moving the hat around, kind of seeing where I want my sentiment, and then I'll stamp that down using that VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink. And then I will also use the liquid glue to adhere down my little party hat. I love that sentiment. Wear the party hat like a crown. How fun is that? And then I'll just adhere that down. And then that's actually going to finish off our card. So let me shake it for you so that you can hear it, because if you're going to make a shaker, you should hear it. I love making shakers. Y'all know that. For card number 3, I've cut out several of the frames using the different colors of cardstock, and now I'm going to take one of the pieces of paper, the pattern paper, and just cut that down. I'm cutting that to be 5.5 inches by 4 inches. There will be a slight border on the top and bottom of that. And so I'm going to take the blue, this is one from earlier, and I'm just going to use some liquid glue on the edges of that, and I'll tack that down kind of wonky like. I don't want it to be straight. And then I'll take the silver center from before, the glitter center, and then I'll tack that down as well. And then I'm going to do that with the pink and the purple as well, just putting a little bit of glue on the edges that will be over the pattern paper. I'll let that set for a second. I'll do it to the purple, just kind of trying to see how it would look best. And then I'll tack that one down as well. And then I'm going to flip that over and I'll trim off the excess of those frames. The excess of those frames could be used on another card, just in the same sort of capacity possibly, which is kind of fun. And then I'll save the purple and the pink centers for something else. I did cut out one more of the glitter frames, and I'm going to tack that down, and then I am going to trim that off. I don't want to use my scissors because I want to make sure I have a good, clean, straight cut. So I'm going to put this into my Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer, trim that off, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the pink one. I'll just flip it over, and then I'll stick that on the pink one, and then do the same thing again by sticking it inside the trimmer and trimming the excess off. And then it's fun. It has these frames going off the page, and it just looks like it's just this continuing scene, which is cool. I'm going to take some foam tape, and I'll put that on the back of one of the birthday cakes. And then I will eventually peel off the release paper. This is what I was talking about by having different foam tapes for my images, and then using my Scotch foam tape just for shaker cards. This one is the Arteza brand, and I really like it. It's nice. The only downside to it is that it's backing paper, it's release paper, just sticks to everything. And it's not that it's sticky, it just like has this static to everything. I'm going to use some of the orange cardstock and my sentiment, and then I'm just going to ink that up with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I put this in my Misty simply because this cardstock does have a little bit of texture to it, and I wanted to make sure I stamped it well. I'll take the banner die that came in the kit, and I'll tack it down with a little bit of washi tape, and then I'll run that through my die cutting machine. And then I'm going to put some foam tape on the back of it, and then I'll peel off that release paper, and then we'll stick it down, trying to have that be fairly straight. And then we're going to move on to doing the inside of our card. I'll take the cake stamp, and I'm going to stamp that on the inside of the orange card base, just using some VersaMark ink. And it's nice because VersaMark ink can be used for embossing, but it's also a watermark ink. So it's very subtle to look at it on camera, but in person you can see it pretty nicely. Then I'll take the sentiment that I plan to use, and then I'll ink that up with that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink and stamp that down as well. I'll put some liquid glue on my card panel and adhere that to the front of my card base. This will be a top folding A2 size card. And then that's not going to finish it off yet, because I do grab some of the enamel dots that came in the kit. I just grabbed some of the yellow. I always struggle with putting down enamel dots for some reason. I struggle more with enamel dots than I actually do using my Nuvo drops for whatever reason. I don't know why. But there we go. That'll finish off card number 3. Moving on to card number 4, it's actually another pretty easy one. I'm going to save, I cut it out of some patterned paper, the frame, and I'm going to save part of it for something else. I'm going to take some more of the patterned paper, and I'm going to trim that down to be 4 inches by 5¼ inches. I'll save the leftover pieces. In fact, I'm going to take one of those leftover pieces, I'm going to put it inside of my card base. This card base is some of the white cardstock that came in the kit. So I scored that at 4¼ inches, like all my cards in this video. And then I'm going to take that leftover piece of pattern paper and just tack that down to the inside using some liquid glue. I like to do that with the leftover pattern paper on occasion. It seems like I do it more often than not, because then I don't feel like I've wasted the paper, and it ties the inside to the outside. And then I'll start working on the outside piece. So this purple piece was from the previous card. It was one of the leftovers. Obviously, it has a chunk of it missing, so I'm going to tack it down. I thought about doing it wonky, and then I thought, no, let's keep that fairly straight. So I'll wipe up the excess glue, and it isn't an issue. You can't really see it. And then I'll take that piece from the pattern paper that I cut out and I'll tack that down. I'm going to put this inside of the guillotine trimmer to make sure that I have a clean straight cut. And then I'll move on to my sentiment, which uses some more of that purple paper. I'm going to trim off all the excess because I want this to fit inside of my MISTI, because this is another piece of paper that is very textured. So I'll tack that down with my magnet, and then I'm going to move the sentiment around, trying to conserve as much of the paper as possible, because I'm not sure if I want more of that purple paper for more cards. And this is the last of the paper. And it's a good thing I put it into the MISTI because it didn't stamp well the first time. Then we'll pull that out and we will tack down the banner die that came with this kit. I figure if you're going to stamp the sentiment, you might as well cut it out with that banner because it's so cute. And then we'll put some foam tape on the back of that, along with putting some foam tape on the back of our hat, because I've decided we're going to do a party hat, which is why the sentiment is what it is. Wear the party hat like a crown. I'll peel off all the release paper on that, if it'll let me. And then I will tack that down to the front of the card. I do want to apologize for how I sound right now. Oh my goodness. This is our first winter, spring-ish in Alabama, and it is wreaking havoc on my allergies. Now, I lived in Georgia for a good 10 years and never had this kind of a problem. I know that was South Georgia that we lived in, and now we're kind of in northern Alabama. And I'm telling you, it has been wreaking havoc. It's like it doesn't know what it wants to do outside. Do we want to be hot? Do we want to be cold? Let's rain all the time. And I don't know if that's normal for around here, but it's killing me. It is killing me. So a few of you have noticed, and you mentioned that I do sound a little out of sorts, and that is why. All right, as you noticed, I did put down some of those chipboard hearts that came in the kit. I used 3 out of the 5, and now I'm putting down a bunch of the flatback sequins. I just thought that would be a lot of fun on that background. And I'm using my crystal katana and the liquid glue to do that. And then I almost forgot that I wanted to do the inside, but before I do the inside, I did grab some Nuvo drops in the color White Blizzard. So this is a clear with some glitter in it. And I actually, after I did this one, I decided to go back and do a couple of the other cards. So you may notice in the pictures that some of those were done up a little differently. They had some of that White Blizzard on the front. I'm going to tack down one of the presents that I had cut out. And this one I cut out flush to it. It doesn't have the little white border, so I thought that would be kind of nice on the inside of the card. And that's going to finish off card number 4. Another fun, easy one. Moving on to card number 5, I have some more of that pattern paper as well as the purple cardstock. I'm going to use that as my base. So I scored that at 4 1/4 inches, just like the other ones. And then I'm going to move on to cutting this pattern paper. The pattern papers in here are just so gorgeous, and you could make cards all day with just the pattern papers alone. They're so pretty. So I've cut this down to, I want to say about 3/4 of an inch. And I'm doing 2 pieces of that because I want a piece on the inside and I want a piece on the outside. And for our outside piece, I've taken some of the ribbon in the kit. And as I've said before, I don't use a lot of ribbon on my card making anymore these days, but I do use it to wrap up cards as gifts. But I'm going to show you how I make a little bow. Now, I have been doing this for a while, so I don't trim it off because I don't want to waste any of the ribbon, but I try to keep whatever pattern is on the ribbon to the outside, and I just manipulate. And, I have this going fast motion, but it's really, really pretty simple. And you just practice, and if it doesn't turn out the way you want, you just untie it. So I just keep manipulating it back and forth until I have what I want and it's nice and tight. And then I'll trim off the excess on both sides, and then we have our little ribbon ready to go. So if that's something that you're interested in seeing, I suppose you could either slow it down or just keep watching that over and over again. But I've been doing it for years, so that was one easy way. Another easy way to tack down your ribbon piece, if you want to, without having to tie it on, is just to use some strong adhesive. In this case, I used the 1/4 inch Scor-Tape. And then I'm going to put it on the top and the bottom, and I'm also going to put it on the sides. I don't show you, but then I peel off all that release paper, and then I can tack that piece down, and that ribbon's not going anywhere. Now I have I stamped out my sentiment, and then I cut that out using the banner, And now I'm going to start tacking all of my presents down. So I grabbed 3 of the presents that I had. I think these were the last 3 presents left from all of my coloring and fussy cutting. And I thought these would be fun on the outside of this card because I do end up having some leftover pieces by the time all is said and done. So I'm just tacking those down using a little bit of liquid glue. You can see that I have some of those hanging off the side, and that isn't going to bother me because I'll trim that off later. But I'm going to see where I want my sentiment and how I want my ribbon. And then I'm just going to freehand cut my sentiment because the rest of that back will be covered by the ribbon. So I'll tack that down using that Nuvo Deluxe liquid glue. And then I'm also going to put that Nuvo Deluxe liquid glue on the back of my ribbon. And I am going to set a stamp block on top of it, and I'm just going to let it set there for about 5 minutes. So obviously with the magic of editing, it looks like I didn't let it set there at all, but it was about 5 minutes. And then I just kind of, did other things in the process. Now I'm going to flip this over and trim off all of the excess. And then we'll be ready to start working on the inside of our card. And so I'm just going to take one of the candles and I'll just tack that down to the inside. This is pretty simple. And then I'll ink up the Make-A-Wish and stamp that right underneath using that VersaMark Clair Nocturne ink. And then that's going to finish off card number 5, another super simple one. Another great reason to have all of your images cut and colored ahead of time. Moving on to card number 6, we're going to cut down some more patterned paper. I love this rainbow stripe pattern, and there's actually a few rainbow patterns in this pattern paper kit, and I love it. So I'm just going to trim that down. I'm also going to trim down that blue polka dot to be about, I don't even know how big, maybe 3/4 of an inch or something like that, 1/2 an inch. I'm not sure, I don't remember. Yeah, it looks like it's about 1/2 an inch. And then I'll cut that down. So those are going to fit on the front of the A2 size card. I cut them down, that one to the first piece to 2.5 inches by 5.5. So it's going to fit all the way across the card. There won't be any white space on the sides. And then I'm just kind of figuring out how I want that. I'm going to tack this down with a little bit of liquid glue. And then all the way to the flush bottom of my white card base. And then I'll do the same thing with the blue piece. I'm going to stick that right over the top of my pattern paper that's already on there. And then I'll peel off the release paper. This was one of the chipboard stickers that came in the kit. And then I'll tack that down to the front. And I also grab the last sentiment that I have of chipboard stickers, and I'll stick that on the front as well, down in the lower left-hand corner. It's your special day. I thought that was fun. And then I'm going to grab some of the enamel dots in purple, and I'll tack those down just using my paper piercer to pick those off and stick those where I want those. If you see my hands jerking on occasion, like I'm gesturing, it's because I'm also talking with my son. My poor kid, those of you that know, he's in the U.S. Army, and he's been doing a lot of training, so he hasn't been able to go to the store. And so when he finally was able to go to the store today, there was no toilet paper. No toilet paper for this poor kid, and I'm just like, people, come on. And I'm not going to get into whether or not I think this, I do think there's some good in all of what we're doing here, but I'm like, think of other people. Come on now. You don't need 4,000 rolls of toilet paper. So now this kid, I may be having to mail him toilet paper. How sad is that? Because he's gone all over, was sending me pictures of how there is nothing left in all the stores by him. So yeah, we might be mailing toilet paper. That's where we're at. So there we go. That finishes off card number 6, another super simple, pretty one. For card number 7, which is our final card today, I'm going to do another fairly simple card, just a different kind of design. I'm using one of the circles that I had used earlier, and I'm going to cut out some of that patterned paper. And then for my card base, it's just some of that pink cardstock that you see there, and I'm going to get that all ready to go like a regular card base. I'm going to tack down that circle, and that's going to stick off the side just a little bit on that left-hand side. And then once I have that down, I'm actually going to take the silver frame that I had cut out earlier, and I'm going to tack that down right over the top of the circle. I thought it was kind of fun to just, have the two elements kind of overlapping and that circle sticking out the back. I thought that would be sort of fun, a little different, sort of fun. I'll flip that over and I'll trim off all of the excess, and then I'm going to get ready to tack down my candles. So I put some foam tape all over the back of those candles, and I'm just peeling off the release paper now Like I've said before, the only irritating thing about this foam tape, because it's great foam tape, is how the release paper sticks to you, like just sticks to you. I do take the heart in this stamp set, and I'm using some VersaMark ink to just make a little bit of a watermark effect. It probably would have been better for me to do this before I tack down all of my things, but it's cute. It's kind of subtle on the side. I do stamp a sentiment there, but I change it later because I don't like it just kind of flush. You could leave it, but I decided I wanted to amp it up just a little bit more later on. And here is where I will end up making a mistake. I do grab out a couple more of the elements that I had cut and colored out, because I do have quite a few left over actually, so I can make more cards. But I'm going to tack these down just using some liquid glue after a bit, but before I do that, I decide to stamp a sentiment right over the center. It would have been smart for me to put this in my MISTI because I had already folded the cardstock, and there is some dimension on the front, remember? Before I stamped that, I realized I had one of the sentiments upside down, so I fix it. And then I'll ink that up, and I'm thinking, all right, we're going to take the risk. Shouldn't have taken the risk because it doesn't stamp out very well. But I can fix that. I'm just going to stamp onto some white cardstock, and then I'll trim that down, and then I'll cut that out. And then we're going to score that in the score buddy just at about halfway, which was about 1 3/4 inches, something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'll put some glue on both sides, the back part of that, just some liquid glue, and then I'm going to adhere that to the center. And then you're going to want to put that in there and just close it. You want to close it because you want it to, if you do it while it's wide open, then you try to close it later, you'll have problems. And this is where I change up the sentiment. I stamped it on that white cardstock and used the banner to punch it out using the die cutting machine. And then I'm going to tack down a bunch of those sequins. I thought these sequins are so pretty. They look so good all over the back. And I was really, really liberal with how many I put on there. And I still have lots of sequins left over. And so after I am done tacking all of those down, that's going to finish off card number 7. I could have kept going, but time-wise, this is what I have. So let's go ahead and take a look at all of the cards that I made today. I would love to know which one was your favorite. If you did in fact have one, it would be great for you to leave that in the comment section down below. I'll have this kit linked in the description box down below if you happen to be interested in it. And I always appreciate all of your comments. You guys are incredible. I say that all the time, but I truly mean it. Your comments, your likes, sharing the video, subscribing, all of those things make a big difference, and it keeps this channel going. So thanks for all that you guys do. And yeah, I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye, everybody.